Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, the Bay Area's premier author interview program. And today we are joined by a local author. His name is Charles Souby. Mm-hmm. Yes, and he has written a second novel, and it's called A Shot of Malaria. The first thing I want, well, we'll get to the title, which confuses me. But you're the author of one previous novel, are you not?
Oh, that's correct. Yeah, Winifred, which came out in 2010. I just republished it last October.
Uh-huh. Very good. And you have a past career in radio.
Well, yeah, actually, this was a long past career. In the 1980s, I worked for a radio station up in Big Lake, Alaska, about an hour north of Anchorage.
Okay. And you also did some work or went to school here in San Francisco at USF?
That's right.
And you were on the great old KUSF?
KUSF, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a reunion last August. It was really amazing.
It's a sad situation what's gone on with that station.
Yeah. And
it makes me like Dominicans more than Jesuits. That's an inside story. Figure it out. The title of the book is A Shot of Malaria. Now, I read the book fairly carefully, and I didn't find any explanation of a shot of malaria.
Well, it's actually in the first chapter. It's a quote from Bob Dylan. It says, that's like if you catch a cold, you treat it with a shot of malaria. And it basically sums up his effort, the main character Daniel's effort to try to clean up.
Wow. That's nasty but true to the story.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very true to the story. Now, one of the subjects that you get into here is morning drinking in San Francisco in its various districts, Sunset, Richmond, Tenderloin, of course. Is that still something that's going on? Do you know?
Well, I fled to Marin County, so I don't know. I have that, a keen eye, though, for seeing bars that are open at 6 a.m., and I still notice that there are some around.
One of the bars that you mentioned in the book is one that I have been in, called the Philosopher's Club,
right
up near the Portal station. Yep. And my wife and I have a penchant for trying to find places with good hamburgers and draft beer. And we do some shopping up in that neighborhood. And we went into that bar one time, and we asked if they had hamburgers.
Yeah.
And they looked at us and said, hamburgers? Like we were in a foreign nation.
No, I don't think that's a place where they focus on eating much.
No, but it starts early. But there is no eating. One of the points you make, just in passing, but in a certain sense, the book is very much about this. You make the point in a short sentence that the business of being an addict is a big business. Addiction is a big business.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, actually, now I have to remember the context of that. I think that was with regard to with methadone, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that it's a whole industry.
Absolutely, with regard to that.
Highly, employs a lot of people, to treat addiction. And it's become an industry itself. Recovery in general is an industry.
Okay.
Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but definitely commercially viable.
Yeah. The book tells the story of one Daniel Martin and his various addictions, I would say. And one of the areas that it gets into, which is very, very important because it's probably as universal as the addiction itself, and that is the family response. And there are two family responses. One would be from his natural family, and the other from what I deign to call his cultural family or his fellow drinkers.
Right, exactly. And one of the things that drinkers and users tend to do is co-sign each other's drinking and using. Make it seem plausible and justifiable. That's part of the whole culture. Outside of that culture, with his family, it was, different story. They had a lot of expectations for him. He would get their hopes up with all these great dreams and schemes, and it would always come crashing down. And then, of course, there's a chapter in the book where there's a family incident that just is a true crash and burn incident.
Are you talking about the Christmas?
Thanksgiving, yeah.
Yeah, Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Yeah, where...
The cranberry, yeah.
Cranberry juice incident. And it winds up at the emergency room.
Right.
One of his relatives falls into a pile of glass and wine in the basement of her house and gets seriously cut.
Right.
And
it's just based on his negligence and his fear, and his mind was focused on some phantom situation that didn't exist, which caused the whole event. And then he didn't tend to it because of that phantom situation, and then it ended up in a disaster.
Life is much easier with the cultural family.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I mean, a guy could walk into a bar, and the bartender, frequently a woman, just takes one look, and up comes the drink.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's a camaraderie there, an understanding of how it feels. That's a really pretty common element. And
this is all before the discussion of deep philosophical questions.
Right, exactly.
That also occurs in such clubs.
Yeah, right. I mean, the whole phenomenon is about filling a hole. That's really basically what it's about, and that's what the aspiration is. I think actually drinking and drug use for a lot of people, consciously or unconsciously, is sort of a spiritual quest, a misguided spiritual quest.
They're trying to fill the emptiness?
Yeah, to try to fill the emptiness, find some meaning, a sort of a warped sense of reality.
Now, quite frankly, the story that you tell here is hard to get next to in terms of being sympathetic about any of the characters, but particularly the main guy.
Yeah. Well, I try to make him sympathetic. I think it depends on a point of view of looking at it. I try to show positive attributes that he has, the fact that people love him, and that's an important factor.
Women are gaga.
Yeah, well, some, not the right women.
Yeah. Well, when we come back, we're going to look at some of the characters, some of whom I think go gaga, and also catch up on the storyline of A Shot of Malaria. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC. Or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
A Shot of Malaria, the second novel by Charles Souby, published by Infinity Publishers, which we neglected to mention prior. And Mr. Souby is here to discuss it with us. And one of the things I want him to do is read from the book. And I want to do it right here at the opening. The reason I chose this particular part, it's the beginning of a chapter, 29 or something like that. And it begins like so many of the other chapters. What Daniel Martin, the main character, is doing alcohol-wise and drug-wise. And I even said to his publicist on the phone, this gets tiresome, doesn't it? And the answer to that question is it doesn't get tiresome because the writing's so damn good. So could you share with us the opening of that chapter?
Sure. The Christmas holidays look like a cinch to be the best ever until Caroline got fired a week after Thanksgiving. It was my fault. I was at the Teetotal on Thursday afternoon when Joey was tending bar. I rarely went in there during the daytime on Thursdays, and after Joey poured my first drink, he set a bindle on the bar next to it and asked me if I'd like a blast. I absolutely couldn't turn him down. It was my first drink of the day, and there was nothing like a double bang to open up a day's work at the bar. It occurred to me after I came back from the bathroom that I hadn't done a speedball in many months, and that thought suddenly had the most wonderful truth to it. Once again, I was possessed by the demon. Before I knew it, I was back at my place in pocket with a bindle blow, waiting for Carlos's runner to bring me a 1/4 gram of tar. Carlos hated doing any business less than a gram, but I was able to convince him that it had been so long since I last used that I might screw up with a whole gram and die. By 4 o'clock, my life was, once again, totally effed. And worse than that, I passed out on the couch when the coke wore off. I was cruising on a deep methadone heroin nod. The amazing thing about the two drugs together is that until the clinic jacks you up to a high-level blocking dose, over 80 mils, they produce separate highs. It was the weirdest thing. I could feel the effects of both drugs happening inside my brain and body at the same time.
And that kind of story is told over and over again to begin almost every chapter. And it really took me inside what it must be to be an addict, an alcoholic, and a drug addict combined. Something I had never thought of before. I've never, been involved in drugs that I can say, oh, that seems like, and yet it seems like what it should be. And there are some nice phrases there. He speculates that he's beginning a day's work at the bar. It's not his first drink. He's beginning a day's work. And realizing at the same time that at some point down the line on this particular day, he will again be possessed by the demons. I mean, this is good. This is giving us a sense of where Daniel Martin is and who he is. But who would you say he is? I mean, he seems talented, musically at least. We're sure of that. He plays on the street. The banjo is in the process of forming a band, which at least at rehearsal, of course, in a bar. This sounds pretty darn good. And as you tell his story, there comes a lot of things to like in him. Is that the way he grew on you?
Yeah, I believe so. It was, his visions are actually really attractive, and his enthusiasm is really attractive, but unfortunately, the demon, so to speak. And, it's sort of not personified, but represented by drugs and alcohol, but I think it's something deeper than that. But it keeps jumping up and interfering, with his rise. And so he crashes and burns in a cycle, each time a little further. When it got to seem bigger and deeper than all that, than drugs and alcohol, was when you brought in Sal, the guy who is responsible for him getting a shot at salvation. What was different about Sal and all the other helpers? Well, Sal understood him. He could see right through him, but not in a threatening way. It wasn't. He didn't feel like he was being pointed at. It was somebody just comfortably sharing his own experience. This is. I know exactly what you're doing. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And oddly, Sal's experience really wasn't parallel to Daniel's at all. But that feeling he had was what captured Daniel.
Are those kind of people out there?
Oh, I think so. Yes, for sure. Yeah, my experience is yes.
I hope so, because the downside of the story, if you will, is, try, fall, try, fall, fall, try.
Right.
And that somewhere out there's somebody for a person in this situation.
Absolutely. And it's, there's a trail out, and, you have to follow that. And it takes somebody that's done it, to show you. At least in my experience, it took somebody who's done it to show me.
But on that trail, you have to, quote, try other people, other avenues.
Right.
And in Danny's case, for example, there are two women, Elsie and Katie. Now, what they have in common is that they're both involved with the methadone clinic.
Right.
One as a receptionist and the other as a counselor.
Right.
What's wrong with the methadone clinic?
Well, I think that it reinforces the whole addiction and disease aspect of it, and consequently, however sincere a person might be, they're still looking through the eyes, through the addict eyes. I mean, that's my experience. So, I mean, I'm not blasting harm reduction. And my experience with it was that it didn't help me.
Give up one addiction, use this one because we tell you it's acceptable.
Right. Well, yeah, right. That it's constant, so that there's no need to go rob somebody on the street.
Well, we've got one more segment to go here, and we're going to talk about some of the side issues involved in this author's life, and we'll be back in a minute.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC, or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
A Shot of Malaria. That's the title of the novel we're talking about today with its author, Charles Souby. And it is published by our friends at Infinity Publishing. Where are they?
They are in Pennsylvania. And I can't even remember the name of the little town.
That's okay. So many little towns in Pennsylvania. You could name one and you'd probably be right. One of the interesting things about the book is that it gets involved in the importance to this alcoholic drug addict of the holidays, Christmas. And we mentioned in passing that at Thanksgiving he had a disastrous situation with his personal family, his biological family. So at Christmas he wants to spend with the folks up in San Francisco, his support group, if you will. And Daniel is doing some good things at this point, I think. He's busy organizing a band, which, suggests hope to me. And he's kind of becoming, because of that, I guess, a kind of street celebrity. So I'm reading along and think, oh, wow, this thing seems to be turning. And then we come to Christmas.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah. Pablo, a drug runner, is found dead. Carolyn, the woman I love more than any woman I've ever met in the world, according to Daniel, is also found dead from an overdose, of which he is somewhat the source.
Somewhat the source, and also the one that tried to talk her out of it.
Yeah. I mean, so Merry Christmas?
Yeah.
It gives you a sense of, a half a step forward and 12 steps back in this guy's life.
Well, his whole dream, from the get-go is that he wants to have a girlfriend for the Christmas holidays. His relationships have always ended, started after and ended before, and to him this would be like the key to normalcy, and to a good life. So.
A woman that he can love seems to be the key.
Right.
At least at that point. Then the music comes in as a kind of supplement of that. And then comes Christmas.
And then comes Christmas.
Comes Christmas. And at this point he starts thinking about what he could do on the Golden Gate Bridge or off the Golden Gate Bridge. And then he gets involved with another, I think, maybe it's not, a different form of treatment, a psychiatrist who puts him on a certain kind of drug which causes great delusions.
Right, yeah.
What the heck is that all about?
Well, it's it is what it is. I have to say that although that's a fictional chapter, I did have my own personal experience with that. So it's written with a certain amount of firsthand knowledge.
The book, I think, ends on perhaps the most positive note it could possibly end. A gentleman by the name of Sal has reached out and been accepted by Daniel, and he's being packed off to a detox clinic, I guess, in San Mateo County.
Or, somewhere,
Yes. And so there's, at the very end, there is hope. One of the things that Daniel has been looking for a long time is love, or true love. Is it possible that a person addicted to the extent that he is addicted can find something like true love?
Well, of course, possible is a big word, and I wouldn't want to, go out on a limb and say no, it's not. But I'd say it's, highly unlikely. Without, at the risk of getting too philosophical, I think true love, has to accompany self-awareness. And without that, there's something, one of the things when, I think when you put two addicts together, what you get is one huge addict, between the two.
I was thinking that one of the other parts of it that seems unlikely is that, forget true love, a love that results in a marriage of one sort or another, people coming together to form a joint life. It involves the taking on of a variety of very serious responsibilities.
Right, yeah.
And whether somebody in an addicted state is possible to handle.
Yeah, well, he can't pay his bills or do much of anything, so that's sort of out the window.
Has trouble going sober to teacher-parent meetings.
Right, exactly.
Things of that nature. Right now, in this country, as you undoubtedly know, there's a big political debate going on about the decriminalization of certain drugs. In terms of researching for this book, did you come down on one side or another of that?
Well, in a sense, I think I kind of have to just, looking at it from mostly a functional point of view, that it just seems like it costs so much money to try to enforce drug laws. I have mixed, actually neutral feelings about marijuana, but, that, is probably the least of the drug problems. But with other ones, there's so much money, so much time invested in trying to enforce it that it just seems to me that money could be better spent somewhere else.
And keep whatever the crimes are to be minimal crimes.
Right.
Without long, stupid sentences.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's not a long sentence to read this book. It's a very enjoyable interlude.
Thank you.
And it's called A Shot of Malaria. It's written by Charles Souby. Charles Souby, and published by Infinity Publishers. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC, or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.